If the token is directly tied to the value of the company, it's almost like the token and the stock will move in tandem because
all thousands of those people could come together and own a piece of that house that is valued.
We all saw where things went belly up and things went sideways. So yes, it does go against the ethos, but
Welcome back to yet another episode of the CryptoNoobz podcast, where we talk about cryptocurrency and the world around it. I'm your host, NelsonRecardo.X, and I'm joined with my co-host,
Lamont Aswood, aka Crypto Lambo.
And on this episode, we're going to be talking about stablecoins, tokenization, real-world assets, and even more. So Lambo, first and foremost, once again, what are stablecoins and what's happening with them in the industry?
So stablecoins are basically a type of cryptocurrency that is pegged to a fiat currency. It'll either be, usually more times than most, is going to be pegged to the US dollars. When you see it trading on exchanges, it's always going to have a value equal to $1. It'll either be $1 or $1.005 or 0.9995, but the goal is to always remain tied to that dollar. Or you might have a stablecoin that's tied to the euro, the Great British Pound. But ultimately, its purpose is to be tied and synchronized essentially with a fiat currency. So you have a lot of stuff that's going on with stablecoins, especially in the US. You had the passing of the Genius Act. Now you have something Tether just announced that they're making a USAT, because Tether operates the USDT. They're making the USAT, which is essentially a new type of stablecoin, but it's going to be created with the sole purpose of complying with government regulation. So that's basically the whole purpose of it. They just are creating it to make sure that it complies with all the regulatory standards. So that's going to be a new stablecoin project that they're launching. And the former the executive director of the White House Crypto Council, Bo Hines, he held that position. He's been appointed as the CEO of Tether USAT. So he's going to spearhead this new project. So essentially Tether look like they're trying to really, because America kind of has taken the stance that they're not going the route of a CBDC. They're going the stablecoin route. So it looks like this guy who actually used to work in the White House, he's a young guy. He's like probably 30 or something, if I'm not mistaken, 30 or 20 something. He's now going to spearhead this project to create the stablecoin essentially to comply with US regulation. And there is some speculation. I think this might put Tether in a position to be almost the official stablecoin of the United States, in my opinion, because they already have such close ties with the US government and stuff like that. So yeah, this is definitely a game changer. I think there was the big question on whether they'll go the CBDC route. Like I said earlier, they've picked the stablecoin route, but I think this is probably going to be either the coin or one of the coins to become the official stablecoin of the US.
So when it comes to that, you just spoke about the USAT versus USDT, and the whole point of the USAT is that it's just to me it just sounds like another USDT. It's just that this one just complies with US regulations. So, yeah, so the question I have is, does USDT not comply with US regulations? Could you explain it a bit further?
I'll have to look more into that, but I think more so it'll do with like regulatory requirements, actual operation of smart contract probably changes. They'll probably make some smart contract changes, things like that, with the code itself. So I think that might probably be something that's going to have to be a little bit more hashed out, because they'll got to go into like supply, all of that. It's just been, I think it's yesterday's or early this week. So I'll have to do a little bit more deep research to see the exact difference as to between USAT and USDT. They said that was one of the main things to make it, yes, for shortfalls that USDT might have had as far as like regulation or any questions they might have had around it. SAT is kind of created to fill in those holes.
I think when it comes to stable coins, one of the things that I really like that I'm seeing is that more companies are adopting it. As I said before, Visa and MasterCard, PayPal created their own stable coin. a lot of people seem to be creating their own stable coins now for various reasons. And with this, I do think that these stable coins are going to allow more adoption into the crypto area.
Yeah.
Yeah, into the crypto.
That's definitely going to happen. Like the CEO of Stripe, I think his name is Patrick Collison or something like that. He did an interview this week where he actually talked about how more businesses are starting to adopt stable coins. And he gave a few reasons. He was talking about just like Lee is faster, more reliable, and is cheaper for transactions. Also a lot of it has to do with like cross-border payments. So if you operate a business in Geneva, I live in the Bahamas, I have to send you funds instead of us going through the old SWIFT system or automatic clearinghouse. That could take days for the funds to reach, the conversion rates and all that. Good. Kind of, create some confusion. We could now, all right, I'm going to send you 10,000 USDT. You're getting exactly 10,000 USDT and you're getting that in minutes. You don't have to worry about the bank stopping it, anything like that. So now is creating an ease of doing business because now, yeah, so you start to see more businesses starting to use that method because it's just easier. It's just an easier method, less red tape as far as like exchange controls and border control. Yeah, they're starting to take that approach more.
And I noticed that different companies, different businesses seem like they want to create their own stable coins rather than just use some of the stable coins that are already out there. And I was just looking at some of the reasons why this is actually the case. And some of the reasons include that they want control over their money and basically the network effect. So every time someone uses it, they're locked into the company's ecosystem. And when they're locked into the company's ecosystem, they control the rules, they control the interest rates, the fees, and who gets access. So maybe that's part of the reason why you see PayPal coming out with if I'm not mistaken, PYUSD.
Yeah.
And I even think Amazon also is creating its own stablecoin. And then another thing too is passive revenue stream, where people basically stablecoins can make money through something called a float. And this is when people deposit $100 to mint your stablecoin, you hold their $100. So now you can invest those dollars and earn interest, and then multiply that by millions or billions in circulation, and it's free money. So, and then obviously there's the ego effect. I have my own stable coin, or this particular business has their own stable coin. So it's like all of these reasons just come to show why people are now adopting stable coins and creating their own stable coins. Earlier you talked about how America pivoted towards the CBDC. I think a lot of countries now are moving a bit away from the central bank digital currency. I think that they tried it and there was a lot of rejection. Now, how I feel about central bank digital currencies is they could do quite a lot of things, but the only thing is that they come with a built-in limit of being limited only to that particular country versus cryptocurrencies or stable coins that allow you to be able to transact all across the world. So yeah, like these are just some of the thoughts on the whole stablecoin situation,
Yeah, as far as them pivoting towards more stable coins, it does still raise a red flag because, for example, if you have a company like Tether is the stablecoin issue in the United States. Tether essentially is controlling the money. So what that does is that creates almost it is a risk, a governance risk there. Tether is not doing exactly what they need to do. So as far as like the USAT aspect, when it comes to the figurehead stablecoin in the US, they will have to be almost completely transparent. It would almost have to be like, it's almost like it'll have to be nationalized in a way. The government will have to like have a hands-on approach with it because you can't be issuing something that the government's going to be using wild scale for its people, but then say, all right, we're a private company, we don't have to send you certain information. No, sure. And where crypto has been such a volatile space and so much has happened, even if it doesn't come from the Republican side, the Democratic side, they're going to raise hell over that. So that's going to be understandable because it's like they want to ensure that, hey, you have these people, you have millions of dollars, basically billions of dollars in client funds out there, trillions of dollars really in client funds out there. You got to make sure these people funds are safe. So that's going to be another question on how will they put more regulation on Tether if they take that route of using Tether as the stablecoin issuer in the US. Yeah, this is interesting. It looks like Tether is definitely in that position. They're in the forefront position of being that. Unless the US makes like another company just out of the blue, I could definitely see Tether being the face of or the
So now on that same note, I wanted to ask you about something that I saw on the news, right? So I saw where the NASDAQ recently filed with the US SEC to allow the trading of tokenized securities on its main market. If it's approved, it would mean traditional stocks and ETF-like things could be traded in tokens or digital form alongside standard securities. Could you explain to us what that means?
Well, basically all they're doing is they're taking a traditional asset like stock, bond, treasury, stuff like that, and they're creating like a digital token version of it. So instead of you having Amazon stock, you will have Amazon token. So let's find like Apple stock price, $234, right? Now, let's say if you use to tokenize Apple stock, like you have some sort of measure or scale to it, right? And you issue a set of tokens. Not everyone has $234 to buy one Apple stock, right? So now you have people who could say, all right, I could buy 20 something dollars of Apple token. That's this token that represents is essentially a representation of the Apple stock. Because if the token is directly tied to the value of the company, it's almost like the token and the stock will move in tandem, because as the company has positive quarters, as they're doing well, good news comes out about the company, just how you expect the stock price to increase. In a perfect world, you can expect the token price to increase. So it's just almost like they're creating a digitized version of their already existing security. They're doing that just to make it more accessible. Because think about it, you have people, and that's going to open up a whole new area as far as like revenue or investment opportunity for the company itself, because now you have money coming in from all over the world. Because you have people in Africa who would love to buy Apple stock, who can't, right? You have people in Dubai, because of like, obviously they're US citizens, they might not have a US trading account, they don't really have access to it. But if they could go on any exchange, Binance, Kraken, KuCoin, whatever, and they're able to buy a securitized version of that Apple stock, that could actually be a serious cash injection for the company itself, and that bolster the company's image. And if it does well, that's going to continue to go up. But, yeah.
So
that's just basically almost like the same. Just instead of you having to buy the whole piece of something, let's say like if you have a birthday cake, instead of you having to buy the entire birthday cake, you could now buy slices.
that's understandable. So basically, anything that, like, say, a stock, a share, bonds, or even something that we're gonna hear a lot being real world assets, or RWA. So basically, anytime there's this particular asset, it can now be broken down even further, even into more smaller pieces. So let's say that you wanted to purchase a home and the home costs $1 million, right? Instead of having to come up with a whole $1 million, if you have 1,000 people and then each one of these 1,000 people could buy a token, the token is worth $1,000 or what's not. Now, all thousands of those people could come together and own a piece of that house that is valued at XYZ millions of dollars. And that opens different opportunities for investors and what's not. And I really loved how you pointed out that now even countries that are outside of the US, because I think even us inside of the Bahamas or inside of the Caribbean, right? We want access to the stocks that are inside of America. But usually for us to gain access is usually a lot of different loops and trials that we have to go through to be able to access those things. But now with tokenization, even inside of our CryptoNoobz community, we had discovered this one particular app that allowed us to go in there and basically buy US stocks with USDC. So when we see these kinds of innovations happening, it is really allowing much more global access to investing mechanisms that was never open before. There's usually a whole lot of barriers to entry. You usually needed a certain amount of money to get inside of certain investments, or if it's not a paywall, it was usually on who you know type of situation. Like, you wouldn't gain that information unless you actually know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody else, you know?
Yeah.
So now it's like dispersed, and I really like what's happening. When we talk about RWA, or real world assets, it's
Yeah.
basically assets that are inside the real world that are now added to the blockchain. So now basically whatever asset that you have can also be recorded on the blockchain, which allows it to once again be traded, and even other rules to be created about it, you know?
Yeah.
Basically things that exist outside of the crypto space that are now added to the blockchain.
Yeah, like I used to be on this website. I think it's named Lofty, and they'll let you buy like houses or like rental buildings. So it was a few stuff like you had plazas that was on it, so you could buy like a piece of it, and they will tell you like, all right, they'll give you the whole report of like how much tenants live there, how much they like when they moved in, stuff like that. So they'll almost give you like a landlord report in a way. So you can know if you want to invest in this, and they'll give you a fraction of whatever profits are left. Because like they'll have to do maintenance and all that. It allows you to be like a real estate investor without actually getting into real estate. Because I'm a person, I don't really know a lot about real estate to say a real estate investor, because a lot of people don't realize when you buy these properties, you have to fix them up, you have to do this, you have to do that maintenance, and that costs money. So it allows you to be more so of a passive investor in a way, where you could buy it and you would get, albeit a smaller fraction, you still get a fraction of the profits without doing none of the work. So yeah, stuff like that. Because beforehand, you would have had to probably call someone who is a real estate agent. They'll say, all right, I have this property. They'll have to send you the information. You might have to travel, sign documents, do all of this. Or they'll have to send it you stuff, sign it, scan it, send it back. It would be a lot of more work. But now it's like you could just go and buy a token and represent ownership in that asset. That's much easier and much more cost effective, really.
Now I do have a question though. With this integration of now stable coins and countries now accepting crypto, like on one end, we've done it. That's the thing. Like, congratulations, we have done it. The crypto industry is getting crypto to be adopted a lot more. However, with all of these now new implementations and rules and regulations, the question comes, which is, are we still being true to the whole point of cryptocurrency, especially like when Bitcoin first dropped? As we know, the whole point was to allow financial access and financial freedom. Basically, coin that is a appreciating asset, it's only gaining more and more dollar value as time goes by, or as some people might say, it might be the reverse, which is the dollar is losing value while Bitcoin is going up in value, right? But have we forgotten where we came from? Because with all of the new integrations and innovations, we are now turning to a place where we're now even having more regulations and rules, which was the enemy. Like, banks were once the enemy of crypto. But now we're embracing banks, we're embracing regulations and all these types of things, which was not the point. That was never the goal. In fact, our goal was to be the opposite. But what do you think? Are we losing our way?
You could say that. I'm not gonna lie, you can say that. But here's the thing, like Bitcoin was originally created really for the exclusion or to eliminate the need for like a middleman or intermediary. It was a peer-to-peer system where I send you money and you send me money. Nothing else really supposed to be in between. That is, a lot of it is changed. A lot of the what's going on has changed. Like, it's supposed to be almost opposite of regulation. So when you have regulation that came, but what you have to understand too is this: with crypto in itself, some crypto projects need regulation. So, for example, XRP is one of the biggest crypto projects out there. XRP is designed for banks. So, ultimately, a project like XRP needs that regulation. They need that. They need that extra eyes on them, because when you're dealing with banks, banks don't want to deal in nothing that's unregulated. when you're dealing with investment funds and investment companies, they don't want to deal with nothing that's unregulated, because you got to understand, you have people's pensions at risk, you have people's livelihoods at risk, and you can't tell people you put their money into an unregulated product. So whereas you saw like a lot of the gains and the benefits of the crypto industry, we all saw where things went belly up and things went sideways. So yes, it does go against the ethos, but you have to understand it. It's almost like this. Imagine you have a sport, which is kind of like an extreme sport. It grows to a certain extent. Then you add new rules to make the sport safer. Now the sport actually can go on mainstream television. Now more people can actually watch the sport. It's going to grow the sport, but it's kind of might go against what the sport is initially meant to represent, of almost like being no holds barred, if that makes sense. So crypto needed regulation to grow, because when you get that traditional money, the retail money can't really compare to the traditional money. Like that institutional money, the retail money can't really compare to that. So when you have the regulation in place, that's when you have the banks start trusting this. That's when you have the investment companies start trusting this. And that's when they start putting their money in and growing the industry itself. So yes, you can say for sure that the regulation has gone against the ethos of what crypto and Bitcoin meant to represent in the first place. But then you must also consider that this industry would have probably never gone to the point that it is now without that. Because usually whenever you see the biggest price jumps in crypto is when a new regulation is announced. Whenever a new regulation is announced, whenever a new bill is signed, whenever a politician speaks about it in a positive light, that's when you see the value increases. When Gary Gensler was against the regulation of crypto, and he was like almost like anti-crypto, people hated him for it because they felt as though he's trying to stop this progress. But now they're embracing it, right? So yeah, you can say it definitely went against what it was created for, but I think that kind of probably was a necessary step. I personally, I agree with what Summer was created for, like to have more control over your money. But when you're starting to get to the point where you're adding this into investment funds, and these are going into people's like IPS investment policy statements and stuff, and they're starting to invest their life savings into this, then it's like, okay, we need some sort of safeguard in this. But yeah, that is like a very controversial point, and I think it has gone against what was originally created for. But a part of me think it was a necessary step.
So it's more of it's more like a building block. What I would say is I definitely agree. On one end, we knew what crypto stood for. We know what the entire industry stood for. However, now things are definitely changing, and that question comes up quite a lot now. Like, are we still like about this freedom and be an inclusion, and staying away from the banks and allowing you to become your own personal bank with decentralized finance and what's not? But now a lot of the reason why I asked that question is because now we're seeing a lot of businesses now having to bend to the regulations, and certain projects are now being shut down because you actually have to be within the regulatory space. And even decentralized finance, for example, the whole point was to still be able to have those access to those functions that banks have without the need of a bank. You could stake, you could gain interest on your investments by giving it out, you could get yield by giving it to someone else to be able to use it, and then they would give you interest back and all these various things. But now, even with those applications and platforms, they're going to be asking for KYC, your customer documents, and they're going to be, because there was a point in crypto when we believed that when you transacted, it was anonymous. Now the word has shifted from anonymous to pseudonymous, because it is possible that your transactions can be tracked. It is possible now. Once again, these transactions are transparent and they can be tracked. Once someone could find out what is the numbers, the string of numbers and letters that are tagged to your account. I think, though, ultimately, with all these technological breakthroughs, and we're all just figuring it out. I do think that right now we're just inside the stage of figuring it out. And I do think that it's going to end up being something that is great for a lot of people. A lot of people, I still strongly believe, a lot of people are going to get access to finances. A lot of people are going to get a crap load of money when this already dies down and they've positioned themselves, you know.
Mhm.
But yeah, do you have any final words?
I would just tell you, like we always say, if you plan to invest in any crypto, be careful. Only invest what you could afford to lose and do your own research.
I agree with that sentiment. So once again, to all our viewers, once again, we thank you for joining us on the CryptoNoobz podcast. If you have any ideas for episodes that you would like to send to us, you can always message us on our Facebook, on our X, or even on our Instagram at CryptoNoobz or CryptoNoobz. If you go on our website, CryptoNoobz.xyz, we have some free resources there. And if you want to contact us, once again, you can just contact us on any of our social media for more information as well as any sort of assistance. We are here to help, and we will be giving you even more news, updates, and insights on the crypto industry. With that being said, you guys have a wonderful day.